and this gets both incredibly fun and incredibly loud very quickly.
I'm offended by people like him when he takes Christ and exploits him with this crown of thorns and puts it up in Times Square.
You insulted my religion. I'm offended. You can't say that. Shut up, shut up, shut up.
Give me one damn program.
Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sick of atheists diminishing Christian intellect.
The real question, what is God like?
Who is more irrational? The guy that believes in a God he doesn't see, or a guy who's offended by a God he doesn't believe in?
And I'm Steven. True. I wonder if any of the archbishops have ever delivered a baby. You think so? No, I meant like personally, like had a baby. Like pushed a human being out of their own vagina. They are Catholics. We don't know much about that species. I'm not sure anyone has, except altar boys. They exist. They exist. Forgive me, Father. Uh, oh, I find it odd that a bunch of old men having very likely, I don't mean stereotype, but very likely emotionally suppressed people for basically their entire lives feel it's necessary to start writing their own rules about how other people are going to live their lives. That being said, legally there's some weirdness. I mean, they are a private hospital run by the archdiocese. I mean, we do live in America, and this is a free market as far as the healthcare system is concerned, just like everything else. If you don't like the service you're getting, don't go back to Sam's Club, if you catch my drift. I don't like the idea that they're not giving them all the information. They should probably at least tell them, well, we're a Catholic hospital, this is our practice. If you want to stay here, this is how it's going to go down. Otherwise, we can call an ambulance. It's going to cost you more, but we can get you transferred somewhere else. I mean, just out of politeness, if nothing else. Full disclosure, but I think they have a right to their beliefs and practices, and there are probably some people who would want to use that hospital because of that. I mean, there are dumb people everywhere, but honestly, I think if there was something that was enforced where you had to get their consent, get the information to make sure that they know how it's going to happen, what their options are, that they can be transferred, they don't have to stay here, they don't have to do what you tell them, they have rights. If patient advocates were in use, especially in this particular instance, because there's not going to be nearly as many issues surrounding belief systems when we're talking about stopping someone's bleeding or cancer treatment, the general hospital stuff. But abortion and birth in general is going to be one of those extremely politicized things at a Catholic hospital. So I think patient advocates should be something that would be more utilized in a setting like that to give them all the informed choices that they have. Because as much as the hospital has a right to their beliefs and their practices, every woman has a right to, her life, her health, and, her own choices. I don't know, be infringed upon, that leads to a scary place. I'm sorry, you cut out there. What was that? Doesn't matter what hospital you go to, what? Well, I think there probably are in the sense of taking care of the patient, not putting them in a life threatening position, which is probably where they've drawn the line legally with their, in danger area. But I'm sure that's probably why that's written. I think that's probably why they probably wrote those standards that they had about we don't do this unless the mother's in grave condition, because that probably is like the legal requirement for that sort of a thing. Anybody denying somebody who's in dire straits assistance, public, private, or otherwise, that hospital is going down. It's one of those things like if you're an EMT and you drive by the scene of an accident, somebody's hurt and died, and you could have helped and didn't stop, like, you're legally culpable for that death. Like, you can lose your license and all that stuff. You can face penalties and sort of thing just for driving by the scene of an accident and not stopping because you had the ability to help and didn't. So I'm sure they're abiding by the absolute bare minimum for personal care here. The issue for me is I'm looking at it, and some of them, you said they suffered in one place. 8 hours to reach another hospital. You could easily be transferred in that. I mean, or from where I live, and probably from where you live, they're our radius, right? Correct? Oh, okay. I was saying there's probably multiple choice for hospitals for most Americans. Within half an hour or an hour drive, I could think of probably 10 or 12 good hospitals around me. And the women in the article suffered there for hours. Some of them went back repeatedly. Right? Some ladies went back more than one time, and they were there for hours in. So, well, partially. I mean, I investigate, like, the doctor I would, go to for needs that I would have. I would come up, see what they do, maybe not go so far as to read reviews and things, but at least look into their history, what they've done, what kind of hospital they work for, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to ask questions when I get there. Hey, if I ask for this and you won't give it to me, tell me why. Is it because you have personal, a belief that does not correspond with mine? In that case, I'm leaving. Just me. Now, if these were let's just call them God-fearing Catholics who were, obligated by their faith to follow this, I could understand going back early or staying for hours. Or also if they were really, really dumb, I could see them doing that. I mean, you have to. Again, you don't want to blame them and be like, well, they're just too dumb. They need to get out of the hospital. But, like, some people aren't going to be brave enough in that scenario. They're already in a very fragile state, in a very vulnerable state. Some aren't going to be comfortable asking questions like that, countering instructions from a doctor like that. That's why patient advocates are so important in all hospitals, certainly all hospitals, but most definitely should be for utilization of those in private Catholic hospitals where your care is going to be limited by somebody else's beliefs. So what do you think? Am I off base there, or? Well, that's a viable opinion, and I can't discount it. But don't forget the accomplishments and contributions that religion in general, but Catholicism all by itself, has made in the area of healthcare. I mean, they were uh, monastic societies were centers for learning when we were in the Dark Ages. They were experimenting with herbs and remedies before, a lot of other people in a lot of cultures. They were the healers. They were the ones who were willing to go into places that needed health care desperately and give it freely, albeit, maybe for their own purposes or maybe for, their own belief system, maybe to apply that to other people. But they contributed to the general health and well-being of the planet long before this century. And so if we were to say, well, let's get rid of all religious influence, like if there was some big erase button and you could just, boom, erase all religious influence from healthcare, we would go back a significant way. I mean, if you look at the number of Catholic universities that have funded research and research hospitals that are Catholic and have made discoveries and advancements and those kinds of things, they cannot be discounted. There's a huge financial and structural base there, and they have made very significant contributions. You just need to be informed. There are certain things that people are going to want, and there are certain things that people are not going to want. And I mean, I don't see it as any more complicated than that. We need to have patient advocates in place there. If nothing else, we need to have them mandatory in place for certain things like abortions or, euthanasia, especially talking about states where euthanasia is legal. I bet in Washington State, I bet the Catholic hospitals are pulling their hair out to not assist the patients in, ending their own lives. And I think that's one of those advocacy things. They can tell them all day long, you can't do that here. We're not allowed to let you do that. But when it comes right down to it, if a patient advocate is there to go, oh, and by the way, they can't do that, but, City General's just right down the street, and they can do that. We can have an ambulance here in 15 minutes. This is what it'll cost. It's covered on your, health insurance. Your life insurance will cover the rest. Your life insurance will be paid. You don't need to be scared of this. We can go and do this if that's what you want to do, because ultimately it's personal decision, right? I'm not saying in either case, abortion or euthanasia, that I personally agree with it, and I'm not saying I don't. I'm just saying I agree with the fact that every patient needs to have their rights protected and needs to be informed about their rights and their abilities. And honestly, if people were informed more often about their rights and abilities, especially in concern with the Catholic hospitals, I think they would gradually decrease, they would downsize, they would refocus, they would get smaller, and they would eventually be a non-factor in the arena of politicized healthcare. I think that people would turn away from that for something that would take care of them as people first. And I think we wouldn't worry about it after a given time. But it's not going to happen on its own. People need to know. I win. Telling you what, just representing. Why? Jonah and the whale. The flood? I don't believe it was caused by rain if it happened. such a thing were to happen, you remember Pangea, right? Okay. If such a thing were to ever happen, it's my so nearing humble opinion that the only way such a ridiculous feat of aquatic nature could happen would be for there to be a large amount of tectonic pressure, volcanic activity in the what is at that time the one gigantic ocean, right? Because it was just one island of one massive land, and lots of tectonic pressure pushing out lots of CO2, lots of emissions gases, lots of greenhouse gases, lots of water vapor into the air, increasing the relative humidity to an incredible level, causing a torrential weather pattern to cause a downpour. And at the same time, because of all the volcanic activity, I think the tectonic plates were moving and breaking apart. And I think what we probably saw was a whole lot of large pieces of land masses breaking off and sinking because of tectonic plate movement, both through the volcanic movement and through the deluge of water into a very dry, arid landscape that would have just carved it up. I mean, think Grand Canyon magnified. Like, it would have come down really fast, really hard into an area that's never seen rain. And it would not have been pretty. So if it were to occur, I think it would have taken something along those lines, something cataclysmic in physical nature to accomplish that. No, I'm saying if that were to happen the way it was written, I think that it was a very narrow perception of a small area of the world. I mean, if you're talking about a time when rumors didn't travel more than 100 miles or something like that. Here, Kim Kardashian gets out of a limo the wrong way, and people in China see it 5 minutes later. And in that day and age, people married their cousins because they were the only other people outside their family they knew. You know what I mean? Like, that's true. You have some very attractive cousins. They're very beautiful young women, but you are far from deserving of any of them. Also, Uncle Jim would murder you. We're talking about a story that would have been interpreted from somebody who would have had a total observational range of miles, literal miles. And then if, say, you're on a continental plate that's 100 miles across, sank. And then, obviously, the current is going to be going the opposite direction and carry you out to sea. And wherever you land, you're going to think it dried up right then. Whether or not it really did, doesn't matter. Point is, if it were going to happen, it wasn't caused by rain that flooded everything. There's not enough water on the surface of the earth to just flood and cover the earth, and then suddenly for it to just sink down in. Where did it go? Back into the magma? Are you kidding? There's not that volume of, now you sound crazy. There's not that volume of water on the earth for it to rain and flood. How high is Everest? Like 18,000 feet or something like that? 24,000 feet? I don't know. I'm kind of ignorant on that topic. Think about the depth of water. Oh, Google. I mean, you think the ocean's deep now. Well, I know it's got to be over 20, because I've climbed Cotopaxi in Ecuador, and that was 19 and something. Holy crap. 29,000 feet. What's that, about 6 miles up, something like that? Can you imagine increasing the volume of water 6 miles off the surface of the earth in all directions? That would be like 100 times more water than there is now. There's no freaking way that is humanly possible. And I don't even care. There's no way that's possible. And even if there's an omniscient God who could go in and wipe all that stuff and make it his own, that would be the most illogical way of doing things ever. And I don't think that that such a being would ever wish us to look back on something and go, I don't even know how that happened, because it would do nothing but cause disbelief. If there is no logical answer, such as we're talking about, 100 miles of visibility, and we're talking about tectonic plate movements and Lord knows what else, that's the only way that things could be looked at. Is it's got to be explainable if you're going to believe that it had the possibility of happening. Besides the fact that it could be completely interpretive. Well, why would men have to interpret it? Why would they need to go and make those stories up? What purpose would they have? What purposes would those men have for going and making those stories up? Well, wow. I'm trying to process what significance the story of Noah and the Ark would have on trying to figure out like what physical landscape feature they'd come across and go, I wonder if this was caused by a great flood and a man who had two of each animal. I don't think the purpose of the story was to try and uncover the facts surrounding something that they'd found. I think if it didn't happen, the purpose of the story could really only be linked to trying to explain God's significance to other people or perhaps younger generations. And maybe it happened like they said, and maybe they maybe it was a wives' tale. I can't tell you. I wasn't there. I can have my own opinions about these things, but that doesn't necessarily make it so, unless you're in a Catholic hospital. But anyway, ultimately, I think it was. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. And if I could take back one laugh in my life, it'd be that one. That was one of those awkward moment laughs, folks. That had nothing to do with my finding Andy's offensive behavior funny. Peter, Peter, come on, come on. Then what are we going to do next time? We don't have a podcast so long as you repent. I mean, don't take this as my encouraging not to, but you will kind of ruin the podcast. Ultimately, to get slightly back onto a very off-topic conversation, I think all of those stories have a purpose, whether or not things worked out exactly like they did. I like to look at who wrote them, when we know, what time period they were in, what cultural and economic crises were they undergoing, what types of world cultures were they living in and amongst, what trials were they going through, because that's going to affect the way they write and the way they relive things on paper or papyrus or whatever they were writing on. And so you have to look at it, and the more you read on some of the authors, like you can go and look up a lot of books written by Paul that are not in the Bible. Letters from Paul are not in the Bible, but are most definitely his. And you can go and learn more about his personality and his writing style and things from reading those, so that you can gather some more data when you are reading them about, well, he said that before, and that's sarcastic Paul. I can tell just by the tone that's sarcastic Paul. He's kind of a jerk sometimes. And he is. He's a bit egotistical, as my mother would like to point out as often as possible. She doesn't like the Apostle Paul much. Sorry, Mom. I think that those are all useful. Probably not. I don't know. If my mom knew I was doing it, she would probably go and listen to it because she likes to be super supportive until about right now. And then she'd be like, that's it. I'm done. Lynette Stammer is out. Think about it like this. All sorts of cool man stories. First, we're going to need to get some cool men. Tell you what. All right, so think of it like this. Let's look at the Pentateuch, okay? You know the first 5 books, the Old Testament, and let's look at Revelations. Put all that together, okay? This was... Okay, done. The Pentateuch was all for really recorded history, okay? And according to how we best think things happen, Moses was told these things by God, and then he recorded them. Okay, that's the Pentateuch. And that's not everybody's opinion. I understand if people want to argue with me, that's fine. You can be wrong. You're entitled to your opinion. Anyway, so let's take a mind of a man who fathoms things like rope sandals and cloaks with no underwear. Okay? Eating what is available because it's there, and living in a house made of dirt, or also a tent for a majority of his life. Like a man of that simple a mind. And let's explain things like creation and the origins of life and all that goes on in the earth. I mean, you think he taught him about bacteria? I doubt it. I don't think he'd understand it. You know what I mean? So let's say he put him in a trance and showed him a movie. Like, what's that type of time-lapse photography, okay? So people talk about, and we're going to get to one that you're going to want to talk about eventually, which is going to be evolution, right? Absolutely. Well, let me go ahead and squelch it now. I'll just take the point. Evolution. Creation. I don't see these as mutually exclusive things, okay? I view them as the difference of, let's say we're going bowling, and I'm holding a ball, standing at the end of the lane, staring at 10 pins. I want to knock all 10 of those pins down Now, knocking those pins down would be the equivalent of creating humanity in our current state, all right? I have two options. I can be a jerk and run down the gutter and just like knock all the balls over with the ball in my hand, right? Guaranteed win. That's the creationist view. I prefer to think of it more along the lines of an evolutionist view in that God was a really good bowler. And he stood back and he looked at, this is what I've got to work with. Here's the lane, the grain, the oil, the ball, the weight, the spin, the trajectory, the speed, everything, the vector it's on. Put it out there, let it go with that spin, just the right amount of tilt, and it's going to go down there, and I'm going to knock them all 10 down. I mean, people bowl 300 games all the time, right? Well, I mean, it happens anyway. I see that creative process with a slight amount of chaos thrown in the mix as the way things came to be. So when people argue with me about evolution, it's normally a really short thing. They're like, oh, well, you don't believe in evolution. It's like, actually, yeah, I'm fine with that idea. I don't have an issue with that. Oh, okay. And I'm like, not all of us do either. I'm strongly of the opinion that when science discovers something that's irrefutable, like say you mix red and yellow and you get orange, that if you believe you mix red and yellow and you get green, and then are suddenly proven completely and irrefutably wrong, that if your viewpoint doesn't change, then you're just being purposefully ignorant. And there's no excuse for you anymore. Like, seriously, if it's provable and it goes against your faith should be adjusted. Because if faith is believing what you cannot see, well, I can show you that red and yellow make orange. So you can believe whatever you want. But to take yourself seriously as a human being, it needs to change. And I think there's been plenty of evidence for creation and evolution in our world to take it seriously as an idea that they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. Who says that's not the process by which he chose to create humanity? And if he did, let's say it started with amoebas, single-cell bacterium in the Earth's surface, right? And water and dirt and mixed, and the breath of God representing time and intent. And where would it come out of? Whatever it is. It would come out of the ground, right? And it would take form, and it would get larger, and it would develop, and then eventually, pow, it's a human, because that's where we end up, right? Now, maybe they don't see all the forms in between. Maybe it doesn't matter. But if somebody were going to explain that to somebody who lived 1,000 years or whatever, million years after, first recorded, first understood humans, I don't know of any other way you'd be able to do it other than to show them, like, time-lapse pictures and just go, yep, that's it. And they'd look at it and go, he made us from dust. And God would go, that's not what whatever. Fine, whatever, it's dust. By the time you're smart enough to realize what happened, you'll figure it out for yourself. Like raising kids, Daddy, is Santa Claus real? Okay. I think it was less about soul, and I think the whole purpose of the soul, as we would understand it, would be something more along the lines of a consciousness, memories, opinions, feelings, purpose, things like that. Okay, like a koala bear, for instance. Okay. A koala bear is a very interesting mammal. I think it's marsupial, whatever. Is that a mammal? Marsupials? Are they mammals? Because they have the belly bag thing, the pouch. But I can't remember. If you live in Australia and you're listening to this, first of all, you're lame. Second of all, tell us. So anyway, A koala bear. Please let Andy know. Yes, please let Andy know. Um, because good luck getting a hold of me. Anyway, koala bears. Their brains are smooth. Were you aware of this? Their brains are smooth. They have no wrinkles on their brains, which means they don't have the thinky parts. Okay, and so like if it's raining and cold, koala bear gives no F's. He just stays out in the cold rain. Doesn't care. Just hangs out in the cold rain because that's where he's at. Doesn't even seek shelter. They're just dumb. Okay. Also, they eat something that their body does not have the enzymes to break down. That's the only thing they eat, eucalyptus. That's their preferred food anyway. They don't even have the enzymes to break it down, like panda bears. I mean, this is like an evolutionary, you should be dead by now. Like, why do you exist? Because we saved you. Why did we do that? Because we're dumb. I don't get it. Anyway, I think when we came to a point of being able to understand who we are, what we are, I think that imparts a social responsibility to us because of the fact that we are social beings and we're around each other. So I think if you're old enough, smart enough to understand that other people are people like you, then you are morally responsible for making sure that you treat these people in a dignified manner. And I think that is the juncture where you could qualify whether or not somebody has a soul. Now, a child, obviously, it doesn't matter how young we're talking about, will eventually, with, lack of lightning strikes and car accidents and things, and, the Obamacare Act, make it to an old enough age where they will, turn into an adult, and they will be able to make those decisions and things like that. And so I think that they would possess some modicum of a soul, and it's because they're human. The issue isn't the age at that point, it's, they're human. But somewhere along the line in evolution, I think there came a point when we became cognizant of who we are and what effects we have, and at that point we became responsible for our actions, at least as far as we understood them. And that's about as far as we can go. 100 years ago, people weren't thinking about climate change. People weren't thinking about those things like that. They couldn't really be held responsible for affecting things outside of their world that they didn't understand because they didn't understand them. Like a child. He leaves the hose running, leaving it up against the side of the house. He doesn't realize he's eroding your foundation. You can't really beat him for it. Not that I'm not gonna, but I'm gonna feel bad after. That makes sense? You're dang right it makes sense. Telling you what. So now that we've covered your topic thoroughly, I had one to bring up. It's not really anything I know much about, but it's been big in the news, and I think it could be very precedent worthy going forward. The FBI trying to mandate and compel, the word they're using, Apple to unlock this iPhone, this encrypted iPhone, which it's encrypted. You know what that means? It's got the passcode, on the front screen that you put in. It's not like some Black Ops, Middle East military, whatever. It's an iPhone. It's got a password, and apparently it's not 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm guessing. If anybody in the FBI is listening, try 1, 2, 3, 4. Just saying. It's the code to an idiot's luggage. It's the code to an idiot's luggage. That's the code to my luggage. Spaceballs. You gotta love Spaceballs. I'm sorry. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's great. They've gone to plaid. I'm a Mog, half man, half dog. I'm my own best friend. Your Schwartz is bigger than my Schwartz. You totally called it. Right, right. Uh, going down that, going down. You need to repent afterwards. Ah, I'm sure there are some other um, security procedures in place on the iPhone that are probably a little more complex than the four-digit code. I'm sure there are some other options there. I'm not an iPhone user because I think for myself, but I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm sure there's something else they have to do in that case. Now, it's also worth mentioning that what was the number, like 70? 70 times in the past that Apple has complied with the order. Like they have come to them repeatedly in the past and said, we need you to unlock this encrypted phone. And they go, okay. And they do. But this time, it was made public that they had asked them to do that. The judge sent out a press release and basically asked Apple if they had any objection to this, which made everybody go, oh, they can do that? Now, all of the previous ones happened. Go ahead. Yeah. Well, who's the other most vocal person you've seen in the news defending them about this? Mark Zuckerberg, a well-known information whore. I mean, like if you have, I'm looking around the, I'm looking around the room suspiciously. If you have any secrets ever on your computer and you expose them to Facebook in any way, shape, or form, they're out there. Like he has said in the past, his idea of a perfect world is that everyone will know everything about everybody else, so that there's nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed of. That's the scariest thing anybody's ever said. But then he's over here going, oh yeah, they don't have to do that. They don't have to comply with the government thing. They don't have to unlock that phone. If they do that, then there could be hacks and people could get all your data. And well, what happens if you get all somebody's data? You know, you can do anything with it. Well, that's what you said you wanted to do anyway. So I don't listen to those guys. They're all as two-faced as any politician. They all just want your money. That's what they sell your information for, by the way. Money. So I think when it comes right down to it, part of me says, if we're going to talk about it in public and say, hey, would you go ahead and make this for me? Then I think they have a right to say, no, jerk. I thought we weren't going to talk about this in public, jerk. But I think they would have a moral obligation to assist them in doing it. But once they brought it into public, it's like saying, hey, we have the software here to hack these devices so that you can forget the cloud data. You can take everything off anybody's phone with this. You can have it all. Anybody's phone. Could you imagine if that got out there on the black market? The account numbers and all the personal information that's out there would just be, it would make everything just worthless all of a sudden. All the database records, nothing would be reliable. Everything would be out there for manipulation, and it'd be horrible. Like, we cannot let that happen. But at the same time, I think the company has an obligation to surrender the data. So either A, somebody needs to just take that phone and throw it down the well and just be like, whoops, I don't know what happened to it. Problem solved. Because I don't know if anybody else is aware of this or not. That guy's kind of dead. So I'm going to go with he was guilty anyway. And the best that this could give us is possibly some extra information that, if we're really honest, you could get through his computer or his cell phone records or any of that other stuff, who he was talking to, back and forth. I'm sure they've already got that information from AT&T or whatever other carrier he was on, who he was talking to, how long he was talking to him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're not sure, ask Edward Snowden. I'm sure he can tell you about it. But long story short, I think that they can get the information that they need elsewhere, and that publicly saying that this is happening is dangerous. And publicly saying now that it's happened in the past, why won't you do it now, is just as dangerous. Kind of a, dude, crossed the line. I thought we weren't going to talk about that, Yes it was. First week off. Really? And people call me the paranoid one. Cell phone companies, man, they're beaming the beams right into your brain. You don't even know. They found thermite at ground zero. Go ahead, sorry. You're such a troll. Oh my gosh, Andy. You should live under a bridge and collect road taxes. So anyway, you think that Apple, let me get this straight. Apple is like, I see this guy. I think he's a terrorist. I'm going to give him a phone. I'm going to let him use it. And then after he massacres people, I'm going to be like, I have the greatest technology in the world. Okay, tell me where you're coming from then. Sorry, I had an Andy Coombs accusing the Christian of his viewpoints moment. Go ahead. You know, that is a strangely convincing theory in that you see all of these companies like Google and Facebook just whore themselves out like a Clark County prostitute on coupon night, and then there's thank you for the insight information. Anyway, you see all these companies just completely sell you and everything they stand for out for the almighty dollar. And granted, Apple's done that too, but they haven't ever done it in such a public way as like Facebook or Google. You know, they haven't just, hey, give us all your information, we'll protect you, and then turn around immediately and sell it to like everybody in China. So they may have taken this as one opportunity to be like, this is, a secure location, you're safe with us, that sort of thing, especially with as many iCloud picture thefts have gone on recently in the past couple of years. The number of movie stars and things that have their private pictures taken off the cloud, which, I mean, who puts nude pictures on the cloud? I don't keep mine on the cloud. Do you keep yours on the cloud? You posted those? We had an agreement. All sorts of tragedies in this world. Oh, you're a terrible person, Andy. Uh, One day, St. Peter's gonna look back and goes, he says you know him? He's with you? And I'm gonna go, never seen him before. No idea who that guy is. So he thinks 9/11 was an inside job, Peter. He's gonna go, get out. All right, so seriously though, for a moment, um, I could see where they could try that, but it's public record, like nothing more than a public information request to reveal how many times they've participated in this with the government in the past. I understand the idea that you think you could pull the wool over most people's eyes, but one reporter gets a hold of the fact that you've done this 70 times in the past, and that kind of deflates the whole thing, Oh, you've done this repeatedly, but you don't want to do it now? Why? Well, because now we're talking about it on the radio. I don't I don't watch TV, and I heard it. It was on NPR this morning. What does that mean? Who doesn't listen to NPR? Ignorant savages. Pick one. Well, then, how are you going to do an impression? You really should not. Come on, just leave it in there. Let's hear some NPR impressions. Well, you can't bite off Patton Oswalt. Have some respect, man. Yeah, right. First of all, they'll have no idea who we are. Second of all, if they looked, then we've got no chance. Just none. No. No, Lloyd, I'm not. In the end, I think that personally, I don't think the iPhone is going to be that important. I don't think it's going to give them that much more information that they couldn't get through other sources. So it's slightly a moot point. But whoever decided to break protocol of the way they were doing it in the past and make it a public announcement all of a sudden kind of screwed that one up for themselves. So they need to just kind of sit with the fact that they're not going to get that information, at least for a while. Definitely not within the realm of appeasing the public's hunger for knowledge and justice and whatever else. Maybe you could get him on here. Call your good buddy Vladimir Putin. True enough. It's funny you should mention Edward Snowden. Actually, I was thinking about that on the way into work today. I'm not going to discuss where I work on the podcast because I don't want to, cause an issue with that. But we do a lot of government contracting. Yeah. So we do a lot of government contracting, and I walked in this morning and there was the employee notice board, and one of the things on there was the Department of Justice hotline for I don't know, misappropriated funds or whatever BS you wanted to report your fellow computer nerds for. And I thought to myself, I was like, yeah, that's nice to be able to know that you can just call, report whatever's wrong, and then the government will hunt you mercilessly across the continents. It's so relieving to know that you can just call somebody in the government and be like, bad stuff's going on, really bad stuff, invasion of privacy, stolen data, and they'll be like, stay right where you are. I'm sending a car to come and collect you. I would run for my life. They're going to hunt you. Paratroopers. People would be roping out of a helicopter onto the roof of the building. Tom Cruise, really? Did you see the pictures of Tom Cruise recently after his plastic surgery? Or whatever it was? It was either plastic surgery or he got pounds of Botox, one of the two. It looked like he'd just gotten out of the ring with Floyd Mayweather. Yeah, you're a terrible person. Oh, great. Okay, look at Tom Cruise face Botox. Put it in Google. Image number one. your dad. He looks like your dad. I didn't think about it until you started freaking out. I was like, why is he freaking out? And that first picture, everybody will look it up. Tom Cruise face Botox. Who knew? Your dad looks like a chubby Tom Cruise. This is why your mom went after your dad. I just don't get it. Now we know. Let me put a disclaimer on this. That means this is speculative at best. Yeah, like 1984. Oh, holy cow. Scroll down a little ways. There's a picture near the middle of the page. I don't know how many pictures you get in a line, but there's one of him like at the beach or something with his shirt off. And it's somewhere between impressive and horrifying. That's great, isn't it? I suddenly just had a flashback of Dr. Zoidberg from Futurama. Oh. Are you going to eat that sandwich? There's one like 2 lines down of him as like I don't know, that's a vampire? That's a nice one. Can we all just accept that the 4th Harry Potter book was Doctor Who coming back to try and stop Twilight from happening? Which one? Which one? Well, I didn't know if maybe you meant Twilight, and I was more offended by the fact that you enjoyed it at some point. I do love Goblet of Fire. That's when the ish hits the fan. At least, now. Wow. Mm-hmm. Sounds rough. I think I'd have more subtly leaned over and whispered back to her, I know, right? So hot. I mean, if you're going to get obsessed about the way that another man looks, I'm going to totally ruin it for you. What? I never even heard of that movie. What is it? Never heard of that person either. That sounds made up. Did you make that up? No. These are things on television, I assume. Sorry. I literally, like, other than tonight, in which I have, you should be proud of me, carved out time for this evening, normally in my life, I get up at like 4:30 to 5 o'clock, somewhere in that range, depending on how determined I am for the day. Go to work. I stay there till like 5:30 to 6 p.m. I come home. I eat dinner. I put my kids to bed, and then I collapse. And I sleep until about 4:30 or 5 a.m., depending on how determined I am for the day. That's Monday through Friday. Yep, 6.5. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's like, my kids have only been throwing up every night for the past 3 nights. You could probably edit this part out, but good God, they have been puking all over the house. Did you edit out that part about that time in college with you and experimenting with that other dude? Did you edit that out? It's probably good. Let's see. What? I'm confused. Let's see. I don't see any other news stories worth talking about. I guess the Bush brother, what's his name? Yep. I guess he dropped out officially. That's weird because like 3 days ago he was freaking out about how he was going to win the presidency. No questions asked. It's all mine. Political giants like Donald Trump. You're right. You're right. That's like Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He's going to be president in 2025. You ever seen the movie Idiocracy? Have you seen the movie Idiocracy? Oh, you have seen it though. I don't know, like way too late to stop the truth. Because you want to be embarrassed? You know, okay. Well, he's done pretty well with some of his businesses. And I gotta say, the president's ability to actually influence things in this country has been brought down to not much. I mean, granted that our current administration has done its best to impose its will on the people, but there's just not that much the president really gets to do anymore. Most of it has to do with foreign policy and representing us, in which case, yeah, I'm kind of scared of Donald Trump in that regard because I think, most of the other candidates are at least going to have some modicum of social responsibility when visiting other countries. And I think he'll probably be the one to like burst half drunk into like the Japanese prime minister's home and like insult his mother-in-law or something like that. But oh my gosh. Look at all the minorities. Is this the sushi kitchen? Make me a California roll. Who? I'm just kidding. Half of me thinks that at least Bernie Sanders believes in what he says, and that Hillary Clinton just really, really, really wants to be elected. Um, because I think she wants there to be a first husband for the first time. But part of me says, like, partially, yeah, like, you're no better than I am. Part of me thinks that that's what she's about, and that there's really no point in her. Like, you could have elected any left-wing Democrat at this point, and it'd be the same effect. I don't understand the difference. And at least he has some passion, some fervor. He believes what he talks about. But the other part of me has taken a look at what he actually wants to do, and some of it is a little scary. I just don't know how far we can push this country. There's a lot of change. I will definitely admit there's a lot of change that needs to happen, and a lot of minds, a lot of ignorance that need to be won over. But good night. Some of the ideas out there are just, I think they lead bad places. They sound nice if that's all the further you think they are going to go, but they're going to go horrible, horrible places. Okay. 7. I know. I hope so. I am sure that there is some poor, delusional, desperate. There's got to be somebody, right? Okay, if there are any followers following this ridiculous conversation at this point who would be willing to bed Hillary Clinton for the purpose of getting back at Bill Clinton, let us know. We'll put your name in the proverbial fishbowl. Hillary? Hillary. Mm-hmm. From where? Really? My wife sent me a picture earlier in the day. It was one of those. Dude, dude. So my wife sent me a picture. It was of that sign, of one of those signs, and it said, if life gives you lemons, there's a simple outpatient procedure that can give you melons. So you didn't even know how cool your sister was. 26 years. What's 26 years? You're 26? I mean, I knew you were 26. Actually, the first thought was, my wife's that old? That was the first thing that came to mind. Dude, I'm telling you, actually 30. Like, I went to bed 29, worried about 30. Like, oh, I don't know. 29, you're cool, you're the oldest kid and all this. And then 30, you're just like one of the drones. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I woke up at 30 and was like, oh, yeah, this is the best birthday ever. And it was. It was like, I don't have to care anymore. I don't have to be skinny. I don't have to have pecs. I don't have to dress trendy. I don't have to care. Done. I'm out. Well, my physique at 30 was nicer than your physique at 11, let's be honest. Oh! So, tell me, what did you do when said weirdo asked you for the truffle shuffle? What? Is this guy on mushrooms? Hmm. So I'm trolling the news that's happening right now. They're having issues trying to figure out what's killed. How many was it? 13 bald eagles in one on one farm. Did you see that? A working theory is poisoning. What kind of idiot says that? A working theory is poisoning. We think they may have died of something that they ate. Really? They weren't shot out of the sky. No. There's probably not much glamour and drama in the bad rat business. 13 dead bald eagles in one farm in Maryland. 2 of the birds were close to being mature. It just played in my head. Effect noted. I like the next statement in it. It's been 30 years since we've seen anything like this involving this many dead bald eagles. What? What sort of X-Files crap have you been working on? It's been 30 years since we've seen a mass bald eagle kill-off. Actually, that's definitely like. You ever watch the old X-Files? Like they'd have been from when you were a kid. You got to go back and watch those. Blow your mind. They are. They're awesome. Infallible. Mm, good to know. That one. Oh, yeah, I wasn't headed there, but I'm glad you remembered it. So I would take that edit button and just like swipe over the last 20 minutes of the conversation. Um, anyway, we should probably sign off because I do have to get up in the morning. Wait. Can we start with like episode 4 and then go to like 5 and 6 and then pretend that we wrote 1, 2, and 3 at a time just for funsies? I think that's how you make more money. Mm, yeah. Some high school stuff. You want to talk about high school? Our favorite teachers in high school. You really loved Mr. Bird, didn't you? Wasn't he your favorite? La 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 la. I don't even know the poor guy. I just remember my wife saying that he picked on you a lot in school. I am sorry to have brought that up. Oh my goodness. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 4 of Left, Right, and Wrong. Thank you for listening in. As the conversation digresses, I encourage you to stand up from your seats, exit to the rear, and run for your lives. Thank you, and have a nice evening. And I'm Stephen.